Really, really good from United. A new setup of playing out and really impressive on the ball from Yoro.
Yoro, is it me you're looking for?
Rice ran well, Calafiori ran well, but Saka and Martinelli didn't quite get into the games, and it was the final pass. I'm impressed with you singing there as well, but having seen you play, I knew you were more Lionel Richie than Lionel Messi anyway. So.
It may not have been pretty, but it certainly was effective as Arsenal ground out a 1-0 win at Old Trafford on Sunday to kick off the new Premier League season in perfect fashion. But despite the disappointing result for United, there were actually huge positives to take for both managers. I'm Will Pugh and we are back in the Tactics Exposed studio for the first time this season. Alongside me is the Sun's Deputy Head of Sport, Dean Scoggins. Dino, wonderful to see you again, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Enjoyed the first weekend of the Premier League, maybe a little bit more than you did.
I would say so, yeah. Betfair as well are back on board with us for the entire season, which is excellent news. And Dino, as always on Tactics Exposed, you have got 5 tactical teasers that fans may or may not have noticed from Sunday afternoon's game at Old Trafford. What are they, please?
Yeah, we'll start with Baywatch. Only place we can start. Bay in there, in instead of Onana, and some highs and some lows, let's just say, for the goalkeeper. But obviously that match-winning moment, and we'll show you why. And then we talked about it in the preview show, in Team Talk, and new boys lack Sesk appeal. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But the two strikers, they will have a look at what didn't quite go right for those two. And then Mbuem and Bust is number 3. Really, really positive for Man United. And it wasn't just the tempo of Mbuemo, it was his position that I want to really look at, which is great. And then number 4, Rice and Fury. You didn't quite get this headline in the beginning. We'll come back to that. But look, Declan Rice was a bit off colour, really, at Old Trafford. But I think it was because of the positives of Calafiori that then was the downfall of Rice. We'll come back to that. And then number 5, I banged on about it all last season since Amorim came in. Please find a way to play out from the back. And Yoro, is it me you're looking for, is where we are for United, where Lenny Yoro was the answer to their playing out from the back.
Absolutely brilliant to be back, Dino. Wonderful to be across from you once more in the Tactics Exposed studio. Look, before we go into those points and the nitty-gritty, or the weeds, as I like to call it, just sort of sum up generally what you thought of the game on Sunday.
It was a tricky watch for both teams in a lot of ways, because United, they both came into it loads of promise, and it was better for a tactics purist like myself, I suppose. But yeah, it was a little bit of that. It was I have watched it 2 or 3 times as well, which I don't think many others will have done, but that means I can go into it. But look, I thought Arsenal did a job.
Shame they scored first.
It was a bit of a shame for the neutrals that they scored first, yeah, because I think it would have opened up and we might have seen some more plans from Arteta in attack, whereas we saw them. Look, Man United were the better team in the middle third of the pitch, and Arsenal were better in both boxes.
Yep. And that's where games are won and lost.
Exactly.
Right, coming in, Dino. Point number 1, Baywatch. First of all, the punny headlines are back on Tactics Exposed for the season. You've got 5 excellent ones to start with. But Bayindir, Altay Bayindir, in for Onana. Quite a lot made of it. Amorim looked like it wasn't his favourite part of the day when he was answering questions about Onana. But huge differences in how both teams treated defensive situations at corners.
Yeah, I've noticed something here it's almost so simple, it's ridiculous, okay? So hopefully this gives a little explanation of why it happened in 2 occasions.
So we're supposed to give off the impression that this is a complicated science.
But simple but genius, right? That's hopefully the idea. So yeah, Bayindir, the goal, obviously, right? You know what's going to happen. Saka and particularly Rice are going to stick the ball under the crossbar.
Yeah.
Arsenal are going to throw their big guns straight at you, line up on the edge of the box, line up at the back post, and throw you into the area, okay? But the first grab that we're going to show is actually Arsenal defending a Manchester United corner, okay? And the thing to notice here is about how much protection they're giving the goalkeeper, right?
And you can just tell, right?
Yeah, there's a white force field around David Raya, okay? That gives you 2 things. First of all, it gives you protection from runners at the goalkeeper. And the second thing, it gives you the goalkeeper the space to come out into that area and then dominate,
Yeah.
okay? Dominate that
Punch
area of the
or
field.
catch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, oppose that to what Manchester United did in the build-up to the goal, and it's quite a stark difference where straight away they themselves are putting pressure on their goalkeeper. And we see it here.
Yeah.
They are inside the area, and this is 3 or 4 yards difference to what Arsenal were doing. And Manchester United have created their own problem. I don't know if Bruno there's actually telling them get out.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't like is that Mason Mount's got the Saliba job, okay? But give someone bigger that job,
Is
okay?
that, just quickly before we go into a bit more, is that though to allow the bigger players to attack the ball to try and head the ball out?
Yes, it is. It is in theory, but we know what Arsenal are going to do. We know where they're going to put it. So what Man United have done there is given Bayindir no room to run.
They've got that protective ring,
They have,
haven't they? But it's far too close.
It's far too close. Get outside of the 6-yard box, and if Saliba goes in there and someone's going to go with him, that still means that Bayindir's only got 2 bodies to navigate. Okay, and then after that, the cross comes in, and actually when the delivery comes in from Declan Rice, which obviously is sensational again, there are 11 players in the 6-yard box when that ball's crossed. So look, the goalkeeper doesn't cover himself in glory. There it is there. You know, look at the number of players in there. There's only actually 3 Arsenal players inside that 6-yard area. The rest of them are Man United players and they still don't deal with it. I feel a little bit sorry for Bayindir, but he's got to do better. And actually in the second half, Bruno puts in a delivery that is exactly the same as Declan Rice's, and David Raya punches it clear. So goalkeeping error, yes. But having said that, Arsenal do it better than Man United in both boxes again. And ultimately, that's the difference in the Premier League between 3 points and no points. So yeah, pretty clever from Arsenal. We've seen straight away from them that they're clinical tricks that they do and they win games. And that wasn't the only little dirty trick as well. I'm going to raise another one with you, which we will show as well. But it's actually where Arsenal are trying to manipulate the new law, where goalkeepers cannot hold on to the ball for 8 seconds, because then you get another corner. And you don't want to concede corners against Arsenal. And so then what they do is they get, it's one instance it's Gyokeres, one instance it's Calafiori, couple of times Gabriel after a free kick or set piece runs in front. One occasion Arsenal got 3 players doing it, where they're actually trying to stop the goalkeeper distributing. But fair play to the referee.
So they get
in order so that they get a corner. It happened at the Tottenham Stadium. It was the first one of the season where the Burnley keeper has held on for it for too long and Tottenham get a corner. Arsenal have identified this straight away. They want more corners. Of course they do. They're the best at them, okay? So, but fair play to the referee. He says, I am not going to give a corner if you are preventing the keeper. If the keeper's time wasting, corner. But yeah, another couple of little dirty tricks from Arsenal, which works so well.
Just quickly then, Dino, worth noting first of all that ex-Premier League referee Mark Halsey, Sunsport columnist, of course, there's a great video of him yesterday explaining that even though a few United fans were suggesting, and even Ruben Amorim a little bit after the game, that it was a foul on the goalkeeper, he was having absolutely none of it. Just quickly then, whose responsibility is that? The set-piece coach, the goalkeeper, or the defenders?
Well, all of them. I mean, first and foremost, Amorim and the set-piece coach, who should have a better plan than that, because I'm assuming they've told them where to stand before the game. But actually, if they just go back and it's not a very difficult tweak to bring them out. Look, Arsenal are still going to be a threat and they're still going to put it in there. But you've got to give your goalkeeper a bit more protection, be a bit more physical in those areas. They were physical everywhere else, but in those areas they've got to be a bit more physical. And of course, the goalkeeper has just got to be better. He was Saliba only really just puts an arm on him.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a two-handed shove. No. Otherwise, VAR would have ruled it out. Mark Halsey's absolutely bang on in my view. It's not a foul. That is far too soft for a goalkeeper to be falling backwards and flapping his hands all over the place. He's got to be bigger, stronger and punch the ball.
All right, Dino, nice one. Point number 2 then. New boys lack Sesk appeal. Now, in the old days, and by old days I mean at the beginning of last week's Team Talk show, we were pronouncing this Sesk. Benjamin Sesko. So Sesk appeal makes more sense than Sesk appeal.
Still nice,
but
though.
We got absolutely slaughtered in the comments.
Apparently the experts are
exactly.
not getting the pronunciations right. Sorry. I am not an expert at pronunciation, but I will try my best. And our producer James sent me a lovely video from the Premier League with all the players pronouncing their own names. So I'll do my homework. And so it is Sesko and Gyokeres.
Yeah,
okay?
the most passive-aggressive work email I've ever seen. Hi, Dean. I just thought you might benefit from these pronunciation guys. Thanks very much, James. I couldn't agree more. Arsenal, obviously, in the build-up, Arsenal, Man United both made big money signings on Gyokeres and Sesko. And that's kind of what all the talk was about for the game. A record-breaking audience watched Tactics Exposed Team Talk, our weekly preview show, which goes out every Thursday on the Sunsport YouTube channel. And the title was, How Arsenal Man United Will Be Decided by the Flying V Attacks that both teams will operate under, or will lay out for the game. Lots of the chat, including ours, was about how Gyokeres and Sesko will perform within those. Sesko didn't start, and Gyokeres, they didn't really find him.
This was the most disappointing thing for me was in Amorim. I actually said in that show that I really hope for the fans in the ground and for everyone as a spectacle that we see Sesko in the start of the game, but straight away what it meant was, look, Mason Mount had a good game.
Yeah.
Right? He played well, but he was the extra midfield player coming back and helping out with Arsenal's runners that come from defensive positions. Okay, but so therefore we didn't really see that flying V from United. We'll come back to that in a sec. But Gyokeres, look, it probably won't be a memorable performance for him. But again, there were good signs. I'm not going to hang my hat on that there's disappointing just yet. It was away at Old Trafford. They scored an early goal. Yeah. So therefore, they didn't have to come out and be expansive. And so therefore, he spends a lot of the game a bit isolated because, he hasn't got the support because, look, they're winning, okay? Yeah, exactly. So it's an away performance, right? Yeah. So let's not be too...
It worked. 3 points,
okay? Yeah. And so Gyokeres, let's not be hasty and go on him just yet. And there were some good signs. First of all, one of the things I did mention in the Team Talk show was about emptying midfield. Yep. So we're going to show a really good grab here of where, we have Ødegaard go one way, Rice go another, and Zubimendi, who had a decent afternoon as well in his first Premier League game, drop into an area, which means you open up this huge space in midfield, which seems counterproductive. Yep. But what it does is it means that there's a passing lane for then the striker to come and get the ball into feet, okay? And I was so impressed with De Ligt in this game defensively. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. For me, I don't think I've seen a better performance in a Manchester United shirt from De Ligt. That was his best performance. And so therefore, again, in Gyokeres' favour, he's come up against a big quality centre-back who's had a good game against him. I wouldn't quite use the phrase pocketed him, as which my son used, but look, it was a really good battle. And look, with that emptying midfield, it means that Gyokeres comes and gets the ball into feet, but then he's in his own half, he's around the halfway line, he's trying to bring players in around him. And then the other thing I would say is that when Arsenal broke, they weren't very good. They were, and they a lot of times they broke from midfield. Ødegaard ran well, Rice ran well, Calafiori ran well, but Saka and Martinelli didn't quite get into the games, and it was the final pass. And again, we're going to show another example where Gyokeres makes it was a break through the middle from Martinelli. And he ends up playing a horrible pass at the end of it where the ball goes out of play. But there's an opportunity to give it Gyokeres early, and he doesn't.
Give it Gyokeres early.
Give it him early. He's the big number 9, okay? He makes a great run down the channel. They don't find him. Yep. And then, in the same move, they get 30 yards further up the field. He realises he hasn't got the ball from the first pass. He gets himself in between 2 defenders, and there's another through ball on, and they don't pass it to him again. So they're going to have to learn his runs, and he's going to have to get the timing of those runs right. So they're new together. They need to link up a little bit. So it wasn't... he only had, Havertz had the same number of touches as him in 30 minutes as Gyokeres had in an hour. Yeah. So it wasn't quite what he would have wanted on his first game. But some promising signs, if not anything, in the box. But it was more disappointing for me that Sesko didn't play because I just want to highlight, he came on, with half an hour to play.
Minutes, yeah.
And there was, I'm going to show 2 examples here, okay? One is where a long ball, we're going to come back to the playing out, but a longer direct pass goes up to the number 9 position. And it's Mason Mount desperately trying to flick the ball on in that position. And Mbuemo's making a great... Mbuemo, Mbuem is making a great run in behind, and you would think in that scenario, the 6'5" number 9 is either going to flick it or chest it and play it around the corner, and Mbuemo's in on goal. Okay, they didn't do that, and then second half. First half as well, they get only 2 players in attack. Because as I said about Mason Mount, he was coming back. And a lot of times, Cunha and Mbuemo are going at Arsenal, but it's 2v3, 2v4, 2v5. They needed the striker. There was a moment in the second half where Cunha does this fabulous bit of skill in midfield, bursts through the middle. And then at that point, Manchester United have 3 players running, and Benjamin Sesko makes a fabulous run, which is either for a pass, and as it turns out, he's the decoy for then Mbuemo to get the ball, and Ahmad comes inside him. And it was very nearly, and that's why I was so disappointed that we didn't see him for the whole game. Because I think there were 5, 6, 7 opportunities that Manchester United had around the edge of the box where they got the ball with runners, and they didn't have the focal point to either drag somebody away or get somebody in. They're going to get better, United, and it was a promising start.
Point number 3, Mbuem and bust. Now we know how to pronounce his name properly. You also got dug out for not pronouncing pronunciation properly.
Yeah, that's right. Which is, as you've just proved, is quite a difficult word to say.
I'm just making him up now. Brian Mbuemo, I thought very promising on the whole. Looked quite industrious, particularly in the first half. He looked quite dangerous. Some good and bad points that you noticed. Yeah,
well, with all the Sesko sort of circus as it went on at the end, and all the talk of goalkeepers and Cunha and everything, what's forgotten is this guy is probably the best signing of the summer for United.
I thought Cunha was remarkably good.
Yeah, I think they were both excellent. And, how often did we talk about the sort of turgid attack from United last year? And now, all of a sudden, they've got these 2 inside forwards who can go out, they can go in, they can have the ball to feet, they can go beyond. They've got a 3-dimensional attack now with
a nice little
these.
package.
Absolutely right. And look, we know what he's like running with the ball. He's absolutely excellent. And as I say, there are a couple of times where, again, I thought Amorim was a little negative playing Diego Dalot instead of Ahmad, right wing back, because there were a few occasions where Mbuemo goes up the inside and then you want Amad Diallo going up the outside, as he did when he came on.
Can you see, though, if you're Ruben Amorim, can you see why, of all games, that perhaps he was a little bit more conservative?
I can take the Dalot one, I would like to have seen Sesko play, but I can take the point on Dalot, absolutely. And Dalot didn't do a bad job, okay? He defended well against Martinelli and he got into some attacking positions. And there was one occasion where he wanted to cross it and there was no number 9 there. So if Sesko had played, and that might have been another scenario.
But they did, my point is that obviously the counterbalance to that, if he'd been a little bit more gung-ho, it's always easy afterwards for fans.
Yeah, of course,
that obviously you against Arsenal at home, if you leave yourself a bit more open, and we're talking about a United 2 or 3-0 defeat today, the narrative is so much more different, isn't it, than it is at the moment, which is, all right, lost.
Yeah, but I also would point, I think, I take your point, but I would also say that it's almost what if we'd been a bit more brave because they played so well. They played well. They just didn't have that cutting edge to finish the chances off and get into those areas, and they left 2 attacking players out. So, look, anyway, Mbuemo. And so, look, his running was good, and what I liked, there was 2 things. First of all, look, we can gloss over his dribbling and his strength and his ability on the ball because they're all a given. He's an outstanding player. But tactically, there's this one thing he does, which I'd never really noticed at Brentford because they play in a different way. He's very, very intelligent with his starting position. Now, I talked about it in a Liverpool show last year with Mo Salah, It's where you give a defender a problem when you haven't got the ball or the ball's nowhere near you, So you get into this little space where you're not occupying the centre-back, but you're also not marking the left-back. And it's almost cheating, all right? Because if you go and stand on the centre-back, then the centre-back goes, great, lovely, my man, I've got him, If you go and track the left-back, the opposition manager, Arteta on that jumping up and down. I was going to say in his technical area, but he never is. In that side are going, go on, take him, because then Mbuemo will go back with him.
Mikel's on the pitch.
Exactly. But what actually happens is he sits in the half space in between. So a few times, another reason Declan Rice was quiet in an attacking sense is because when the marauding fullback, Calafiori goes on, which we'll come back to in a minute, somebody's got to pick him up. So he sits in that half space. A lot of times it was like in a circle or in a square of players. He's comfortable taking the ball in there, And then as the play moves up, he sort of takes a few steps back into a space. There was a great ball from Casemiro to him. There was a great ball from Mason Mount to him. And then he's 1v1 with defenders. Now, look, great passes to him, but it all comes from his starting position and how he drifts into that space. And I was impressed with that with Amorim and Mbuem, because they basically go, it's okay, don't worry about the fullback. We'll work that out elsewhere. You are the one we want going in the other direction on the counter-attack. So that was much, much more impressive. And also probably, as you alluded to, much better from United that Dalot was more like a fullback.
Yeah.
So then they could have the extra defensive player to free him up to go forward. And as I mentioned in the preview show, we talked about that swing where they go into a 4. Quite a few times we saw that where Dalot drops in as the right back, and then they've got Yoro, De Ligt and Shaw almost as a back 4, because Dorgu was given the licence to go much more forward on that side. Exactly, yeah. So that swing we talked about where you go from a 3-4-3 into a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-4 attacking formation, that worked for United, and it was because of his starting position. And I think United fans can be very excited about what they're going to get from him this season.
That standing in that awkward position where you're occupying no one really, almost on purpose. Is that a similar thing you spoke about last season that Cole Palmer was doing?
Exactly,
quite a lot of times.
Mo Salah, Cole Palmer, and it's not easy to do. You know, it's easy to sit there and analyse and say, look, that's really good that he's done that. And it's easy for a coach beforehand to say, I want you to do this. But it doesn't just mean wander into a space and park yourself there, because the game's always moving. And it's always shifting from side to side. So he's always got to be aware, where's the left back, where's the centre back, where's the holding midfield player, and find yourself in a tricky position for when you win the ball back. So yeah, really, really positive start from him. It was just missing a goal, and there was one occasion where he cut back onto his left foot and Amad Diallo came up the inside and almost put him off. Or, you know, if he'd have smacked that in the corner, it would have been he would have been top of the show anyway if that had gone in.
Absolutely. Right, Dino, point number 4, Rice and Fiori. Now, at first, I read it earlier on and I texted you, I was like, what on earth does that one mean? But it's because it sounds like Tyson Fury, apparently. Declan Rice, Riccardo Calafiori. We spoke about Declan Rice quite a lot on Team Talk on last Thursday, and how he would interchange with Martin Odegaard, whether they'd switch sides, that sort of thing. But it was actually an excellent performance from Calafiori, credited with the winning goal, of course, but you and I could have scored that one, that's for sure.
I'd like to hope so.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But just talk to me, I don't know where you want to start.
Yeah, I think Calafiori, sorry about the headline, yeah, it's probably not my finest, but, you know.
We can't always get them smashed out of the park every time, Dino.
Yeah, 4 out of 10, that one. But look, I think he had I was surprised he started. And again, positive from Arteta.
Instead of Lewis Skelly.
Because it was an attacking, marauding is the word I'm going to use, full-back position. And we're going to see that again a lot this season, where teams like United did with Dorgu, and on that left-hand side. And we'll see it with lots of teams this season where they'll get themselves into a defensive shape where therefore one of the fullbacks is the unmarked man and he can go flying forward, okay? Yeah. So he did that in this game. But what it did was stifle Declan Rice a little bit. So, you know, we'll show their touch and heat maps here where actually they're just in the same space.
Right.
And where Calafiori got the most of the ball is where we know that Arsenal attack through Declan Rice all the time. So it's a 6 to 1 and half a dozen the other. He's much more dangerous than Miles Lewis-Skelly in a attacking 8 sort of 10 position, but he's then going into a position where Declan Rice was. So it's not quite right.
Why was that then, Dino? Because we've done so much work last season, or like so much analysis on the inverted fullback. Chelsea played employed that particularly well, but Miles Lewis-Skelly would do that, step up into midfield from
Rico
fullback.
Lewis would do it for Man City,
Exactly. Plenty of players doing that, or plenty of teams trying to do that up and down the Premier League. Why then, when Calafiori comes in, because typically you wouldn't associate him with stepping into midfield like that, why you'd associate him more perhaps with sort of some overlapping runs? Maybe if Martinelli gets the ball, holds it up, then you want the overlapping.
Well, I would call him a wild card.
My point is, though, why was he interfering with Declan Rice, who's a more central sort of player?
I think he's more of a wild card player, and
Calafiori.
Calafiori as opposed to Miles Lewis-Skelly. So he covers a lot of grass.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think that Arteta probably thought that Dalot would play.
Yeah.
I think they've got that right. So he thinks that that's a bit more negative from Manchester United. So therefore, Calafiori can get into more attacking positions without having to worry about that going in the other direction. But then he's also got Declan Rice to cover him. He's got Zubamendi to cover him. So that's okay. But what they're looking for is, because United play that 3-4-3 shape, then they've only got 2 midfield players.
Yep.
So if Odegaard's going to wander, Rice is going to be the cover man and Zubamendi is going to be the ball player. They wanted another player in that position to take the ball on the run and feed the front three. It didn't really work, but there were a couple of opportunities that he had to get forward. There was one in particular where the ball goes wide to Martinelli and Martinelli plays it up the line, but Martinelli doesn't play it quick enough. Yep. And then Calafiori ends up offside. It was going to be the Gyokeres tap in with Calafiori's assist, and it would have been, oh wow, there we go. And it was really close, but Calafiori just was offside because, as I say, because Martinelli took a bit long.
Timing issue.
Yeah, but it's 6 and 2 threes right here. You get Declan Rice doing the brilliant defensive work that Declan Rice can do to cover, but you lose Declan Rice with that bursting run through that inside left position because he's picking that up. So, look, they'll interchange. They'll do that differently. Lewis Skelly will play some games where Rice will then be freed up because Lewis Skelly will go into that midfield defensive counter position, and then there'll be other games where they go on Calafiori, basically not do what you like, but in these areas you're allowed to progress forward because Rice and Zubamendi will cover you. And also, don't forget, Gabriel will shift across, and again, Arsenal will make that back three with Ben White, Saliba and Gabriel coming over into a 3 so that they can provide that, make that sort of 3-2-5 attacking shape that I bang on about all the time.
Yeah. Do you think then that typically, as a rule, obviously there'll be more specific things Arteta's looking for, but would it be fair to say that perhaps Calafiori, you can afford to throw him in against the sort of the bigger teams, the more impressive teams, and that Lewis Skelly would play against the lesser teams who Arsenal are maybe expected to beat more?
I think it'll be a style thing. Right. I think it'll be if you're going to play against a team who you think are going to push up quite high and press you quite high, he's an outlet because he could then bomb forward. If you think you're going to have 80% possession and you're going to have to try and pick people apart a little bit more, then Mars Lewis-Skelly would be that midfield player which allows Rice to get in the box for those Odegaard crosses.
Fine. Point number 5, Dino, the first Scoggins singing trap of the season. And you know what? As it's the first one, I'm going to willingly walk into it for you. Yoro, is it me you're looking for?
Very good.
Lenny Yoro, as we've seen time and time again last season, and lots of people bemoan this fact, most teams last season, particularly the bigger teams, their centre-backs had the most touches of anyone in the team. People will look back and go, it used to be the number 10s, the centre midfielders, the wingers, the strikers. Now it's the centre-backs. Some teams find it boring. But for Manchester United, last season, we covered it on Team Talk, playing out from the back was such a big issue. But on Sunday, thanks to this man here, it was actually Arsenal who looked like they were struggling to play out from the back far more than United were, which was a surprise.
Yeah, it was. And look,
well, not to you,
I'm impressed with you singing there as well, but having seen you play, I knew you were more Lionel Richie than Lionel Messi anyway. So it was Arsenal struggled to play out. Man United got the press right. They set up in a position, but as we've seen with Arsenal before, they're not frightened to go long and over it. So nothing wrong with that. They realised at the beginning United had a good plan. Raya just took the goal kicks long. Yeah. Move on, no problem. Man United, much, much better. Really impressive the way they played out. And again, I'm a nice little I told you so from the Team Talk show because I'd watched Man United's pre-season. Matthias de Ligt goes into midfield. He sits next to Casemiro and the other 2 centre-backs, so Yoro one side and Shaw the other, they split, okay? Yep. And then the wing-backs get on the touchlines to provide width there. So because we know that Arsenal are safe, they are not going to commit these players forward. Loads of occasions you saw Odegaard going like this, trying to get them up because he knew that Man United had 1 extra player to play out. Just a little count. He knew straight away. But they didn't really get a hold of it, Arsenal. And as I said, if Man United had been a little bit better in attack or had that extra number in attack, they might have got in quite a few times. So De Ligt goes into midfield with Casemiro. The centre-back split. So then, early on, Gyokeres got the press wrong. He was then going into the goalkeeper and then the goalkeeper was just giving it to Yoro. Happy days. So then Odegaard's telling him, don't go, curve your run to block off the ball to Lenny Yoro. Lenny Yoro then knows it can't come to him. De Ligt brave, comes to feet. Bayindir plays the ball into him. At that point, Gyokeres is nearly at the goalkeeper because he's curved his run, and then it gets pinged off from De Ligt into Yoro again. So then Yoro carries the ball up the line. Most touches of any player on the field, more forward passes than any other player on the field, played the ball into the centre forward position. He wishes, as I do, that Sesko was there instead. And then Arsenal, right at the end of the first half, worked it out. Really, really clever on the field. They've worked it out. Player intelligence. What do United do then? So they've got Casemiro and De Ligt picked up. They've got Gyokeres stopping the ball to Yoro. And then they've got Saka stopping the ball to the other side. They get the fullbacks up. United then, Bayindir fires it straight down the middle to Bruno Fernandes. And so he's taken out 6 players on one team and 5 players on the other, straight into Bruno Fernandes. He turns and Mbuem and Cunha are running at the other team. So really, really good from United. A new setup of playing out and really impressive on the ball from Yoro. Because when that forward pass wasn't on, he didn't panic. He played it into midfield and they worked their way out. It was a million times better. And I think that was the main reason that Onana's not been rushed back. Because it wasn't just about the goalkeeping. It's all pre-season they've worked. When Onana's been injured, with Bayindir playing out in this way, they knew how they were going to do it, and they did it really, really well. So just get into that final third and get the goal, and there's positives to come for United.